Hello. Thank you, Sandhya, for the introduction. And I'm glad to be here. So I'll start sharing my screen. It seems it has been disabled. Uh, I think it has been disabled. I can't share my screen.
Yeah, just a second. I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you check now, Ati?
Yes, I think it works.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I hope the screen is visible. Okay.
Yes, yes, we are.
Great. Okay, so once again, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And I hope all of you are safe and fine. So today on World Interaction Design Day, all of us are talking about the topic of culture and sustainability. I think it's a pretty important subject, not just for our present, but also for our future. And today I will be talking about sustainability from the lens of an enterprise designer. So before we get started, just a little bit about myself. I have been designing products for more than a decade now. I started as a technology evangelist and Python lead. And thereafter, I have designed products for various startups and big companies alike in various domains like retail, finance, and enterprise. I'm also a design mentor for Google for Startups. And when I'm not designing, you can always find me in certain philosophical debate. So before we get into like hard facts, let's start with a very nice fiction. So I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings, both the books and the movies. And as most of you might be knowing, Tolkien did a great job in world building. There are like multiple races and characters throughout the book, and he has interweaved them in a really nice story. So Ents are one of those races in Lord of the Rings. They are these tree-like creatures in Lord of the Rings universe, and they do play a pivotal role in taking down the evil forces. Now, we also know of one such giants in our world, that is Enterprise. Now, they are the giants of today. They are pretty much responsible for shaping our present and the future. And that's because we are all connected to them, like in some way or the other. We are either using their products, we are either using their services, or we are working for them. So you can already draw some parallels between Ents and Enterprise. Both are giants, and both are responsible for our present and the future. But there is one crucial difference here. I mean, Ents are the natural species, and they're here just to kind of preserve the ecosystem. Well, Enterprise, on the other hand, are generally considered as these big profit-making machines, and well, not so much with kind of preserving the ecosystem. But I think that's the idea that I want to kind of change today, and I want to lead this discussion towards the idea of enterprise ends. Now, just as trees planted today will constitute our future ecological landscape, similarly, enterprises created today will constitute the future socio-ecological landscape. And this is by through their products and services. We are not using them now, but we are also using them to create our future. So they will be our ends, And in fact, I would say they have to be our ends because they are such giants on this planet. And we have to sustain the planet while also growing together. Now, an important point to remember here is that when we talk about a sustainable future of the planet, we surely mean a sustainable future with human beings in it. I mean, I don't think we imagine a sustainable future without human beings. That will be like more like a dystopian future. But then sustainability refers to sustainability of human life also, along with our planet, and that ultimately depends on how we humans behave. I mean, the way we kind of interact with our environment, it's going to shape our future. It's going to lead to sustainability. So the question now is, how do we create these enterprise ends? But before even we get there, I think it's important to understand what exactly is sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability, there are certain concepts that we need to understand clearly before we start shaping things there, before we start changing things there. So the very first thing is that the artifacts or the products that we create today will constitute the future that is tomorrow. I think that this is pretty clear. All the products or all the services, they have an impact not just in short term but also in the long term. And I can take a pretty well known example of that of plastics, right? So plastics, when they were created, like a great invention, they were completely kind of flexible things. You can be used in so many different ways. But then we know, like, we are now hearing some of the horror stories with plastics now. In fact, to quote one of them, it was recently found that one of the plastic bottle that was like perhaps thrown in 1916, 1970 was still pretty much intact in our oceans in 2020. Right. So we know that how some of the things that we created way back then are also kind of impacting our future, impacting present now and our future later. So the point here is that we still have to create artifacts, we still have to create products, because we have to fulfill the needs of the present. And that's also important at the same time. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that we cannot compromise the ability of the future just for our present. So it has to be a balance between meeting the needs of the present and then also thinking about the future. So if we just kind of take the plastic example again, if we had thought about better disposable mechanisms of plastics, or maybe a better way to kind of use them, well, we would have certainly like very different story from what we are having it today. So which brings me to this very important point, that it's not about the human technology, but the patterns of human activity that challenge sustainability. So again, I mean, had we used plastics in a more kind of better way, had we be more cognizant of using plastics, things would have been much better. And let me also take a kind of futuristic example here. So let's say tomorrow we get flying cars, and great mode of transport, seems more faster, seems more convenient. And let's say as a pattern, everybody is able to get a flying car, and most of us then travel through flying cars. So what do you think is going to happen to our landscape? Well, the fact is that all the constructions today, like our commercial buildings or our residential homes, they are all connected via roads, because that's how we travel. But tomorrow, if we don't need roads, well, what will we have then? Well, we'll have more buildings in the place of roads. And if you have seen any dystopian science fiction, you will see that there are flying cars flying above a whole concrete jungle of buildings around there, which will certainly have impact on the environment. So we see that it's the patterns of human activity that actually challenge sustainability, and not just human technology. I mean, technology, sometimes you can say it's a double-edged sword. It depends on how you want to use it. So and it's like a power, right? And as there's a famous dialogue that all power comes with responsibility, so we have to be very aware of how we are using technology. So another important point here is that sustainability is a system property, and it's not just a property of individual elements of the system. Yes, we all kind of make the system together, but there are so many factors which affect sustainability, which are not just man-made, but even natural elements. So all of them, when together comes together as different variables and form a system. That's when we talk about sustainability. So it is clear that, as humans, we don't have control over each and every of these variables, but at the same time we do have the agency to influence the direction of systemic change. So as a systems thinker, and I think this is one of the most important thing, even as a designer, that, when we are doing systems thinking, we have to be aware of inflows and outflows, and we should never take more than what we can give back. So yes, we do have the ability to make systemic changes. So now the next question is, how do we go about that? And this brings me to the enterprise sustainability framework. Now, this framework was proposed by Bradley Parish, and it mainly consists of three big entities. First of all, we have individual stakeholders, that is like us. Then we have the enterprise, and then we have the socio-ecological system. Now, all these entities have their own sets of requirements, and it is important that all these requirements are met, because if they are not, then the whole framework collapses. At the same time, it's also important to remember that all these entities interact with each other. None of them kind of lives in isolation. And as we are talking about systemic change, they're all part of this one system, and they all impact each other. So what we need to understand now is the needs which pertain to each of these entities. And we can take example from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like one of the basic needs theory. Obviously, we have more needs theory like Max Neef, but let's kind of stick to Maslow's hierarchy of need. It's like more popular and perhaps more widely read. So what Maslow's hierarchy of needs says is that it gives you this pyramid in which there is a stepwise succession of needs. So starts with your most basic needs, like you should have food, you should have shelter, you should have like health and hygiene. Thereafter, you have to fulfill your social needs, and it goes at the top of the pyramid to self-actualization needs. So what we would like to do is to understand all of our entities in terms of basic survival needs and thriving needs. So we look at the bottom tier of the pyramid and the top tier of the pyramid, and we'll see how these needs pertain to the different entities and what we can do about fulfilling all these needs in harmony. So when we talk about individual stakeholders, well, yeah, it starts with your very basic material needs and material and psychological needs. So as I said, we need to have food, we need to have shelter, we need to have health. And it's only when we satisfy these basic needs then we can think of something else. We can think of higher level things. So once we do that, a thriving need is to give back to the surrounding system in a meaningful way. So these are our survival and thriving needs. For an enterprise, well, it's pretty obvious that their survival need is to maintain itself. They should not go out of business. Their shops should not be closed. So they need to maintain themselves. But once that is done, uh, enterprises should create value for the environment. So, I mean, value creation here does not mean like value creation for shareholders. What I mean here is that value creation for the environment. And I think this does happen. We'll see that when companies usually start off, for smaller companies, it's more about like profit making or surviving. But when companies go like really large, when they go to enterprise level, they have many programs there which are catering to the environment and the society. So these are the survival and thriving needs for an enterprise. When we talk about a socio-ecological system, well, the survival need is to maintain, ecologically and socially sustainable functions. And I think this is what is getting challenged today. And I think this is why we are all here to talk about sustainability. So the idea here is that, as I said, you should not take more out of the system than what you can give back. Say if you use natural resources more than you can give back, well, we'll not be able to, we don't give a chance to replenish themselves. We kind of run out of natural resources. Or if we have more emissions than the assimilative capacity of the environment, well, we go with like global warming. So we have a sustainability challenge right now because we are pretty much challenging the survival of the socio-ecological system. But let's say we are now getting aware, which is a very good thing, and let's say we contribute towards it, we maintain this balance, we let it thrive. So that's when the system's qualitative, we'll see systems qualitative improvement. we'll see, all your AQI going high, and the environment being much more nice for us to thrive into. So given all these three entities, Bradley Parish proposes this rather complex looking Concord model here, which simply says that, the survival needs and the purposeful needs, they all should live in harmony. And all our needs, from like individual, stakeholder, enterprise, and socio-ecological system, they all kind of speak to each other. So we can take an example here, like let's say when an enterprise is growing, they will obviously, and you are employed with them, they will obviously fulfill your like basic needs, in fact more than basic needs. And at the same time, if the enterprise is aware, they will also ensure that they are using natural resources in such a way that it's sustainable for the environment. And once that is done, it will lead to like more value creation and even realization of our self-actualized needs, and also development of the ecology. Now, this is, I would say, a really nice theoretical model. It makes a lot of sense. But then, let's talk about actionable things, like what we can do here. And that's where we come to the idea of structures. So on one hand, we have formal structures. They work at macro level. So here we have bigger things like governance mechanisms, large scale decision making systems, and even legal frameworks. So all these decisions are taken, I would say, like at leadership level, but they also have very huge higher impacts on our environment. And you might already be aware of some of these initiatives, like we have LEED certification, which is a green building certification, which basically ensures that, all the infrastructure or all the buildings, they kind of adhere to certain environmental norms. The emissions are in control, energy and water are utilized efficiently. And perhaps, most of you have already seen the LEED logo on your company buildings, which means that your company is LEED certified. So here I'm glad to say that all the ServiceNow buildings across the globe are LEED certified. Then we also have the Forest Stewardship Council and the Carbon Neutral Initiative. The Forest Stewardship Council ensures that we use products in a responsibly managed where the forests are responsibly managed, which simply means is that, if we are taking so much from the forest, we also kind of grow them back, or we are very conscious of what we are taking away from our forests. And ultimately, we all want to be carbon neutral, which simply means that, if we are like emitting so much carbon emissions in the air, we are also taking efforts to either kind of have equal kind of neutralizing effect in the environment, or we are even not even having any carbon emissions at all. So in Apple's latest product keynote, which happened recently, you might have seen that Apple is getting rid of power bricks in all their upcoming products, because they realized that all these power bricks contribute to about emissions from 50,000 cars on the road, which is like pretty substantial. And Apple also said that they will be carbon neutral by 2030. So I think this is something which all the enterprise companies should aim for. Now, this is like macro level things, right? Wherein we as individuals might not have that much of an impact, but then we also have informal structure where things happen at micro level. And this is where we can perhaps make some changes in our design process. We can make changes in our interface to kind of, move more towards a sustainable solution. We can also influence our peers and maintain our organization culture such that all of us think about sustainability by default and not as an afterthought. Now, coming to the point of informal structures, again, the question is, how do we do that, right? And I think that's what I'll be focusing for the rest of the presentation. In what ways, as designers, can we work towards this informal structure? So what we need is a shift in perspective. And what I mean here is that we need to think beyond just profits. We need to think beyond just delivering products. We need to think a step beyond the usual causal relationships. We have to expand our thinking and think also about the future. And it's only when that we believe in it that we can also influence our peers. So it has to come from within. And I think the very first thing that we can do here is to kind of realize what good design is. So if we kind of redefine good design to also include green thinking, well, it automatically then has to become part of a job. And again, this is something which we can always initiate within our teams, within our peers, and then kind of let it flow across the entire organization. So the first thing in terms of good design that we have to consider is what I call as n order thinking or second order thinking. So as I said, we have to look beyond the first chain of a cause and effect relationship. And I can take an example here. So years back, like I'm talking maybe like more than a decade back, whenever uh, we used to get like emails, especially business emails, there used to be this line called as like print this email. It was like pretty significant in that email. And perhaps it was important for certain profiles like business executives who wanted to print their reports, who wanted to print business summaries. And maybe somebody thought that giving this print this email pretty significant on the screen will actually solve this problem of quickly printing out and then going through the information. Yeah, that's like one order thinking. But if you ask the question that and then what, and then like if what if people keep on printing, what happens then? Well, we soon realized that it led to like a lot of paper wastage, and well, not that useful too. So nowadays you will see that all these emails, they come with a rather opposite tagline that don't print this email. Or if you opt for, let's say, bills, they will also give you an option to only opt for like soft copies and not hard copies. So what I'm saying here is that whatever decisions you make, just think of the next step about that and ask the question and then what, right? So this brings me to the next point, which is of green nudges. Now, it's a psychological concept, very closely related to how we behave, and it can lead to behavioral changes. So nudges usually lead to certain behavioral changes, and there are many excellent books and papers written on this topic. So today I would like to talk about green nudges, and they aim at promoting environmentally responsible behavior. So the example that I took previously of like not printing this email was a kind of a green nudge in which you actually tell your users or customers to not to print this email, thereby making a more environmentally aware decision. Now, the taxonomy of green nudges, we can divide it perhaps in three types. The very first one is to capitalize on our need to maintain our self-image. So I don't think any of us would like to say that I want to destroy the environment, or I don't want the environment to be green. Does not matter to me, right? We always want to be on positive side of things. We always want to be, we have the self image also associated with it, in which we want to say that yes, we do care about the environment. And perhaps designers can use this tendency to maintain an attractive self image to promote it through labels. So let's say products have eco labels, or certain products, while you're using certain services, they say that if you do that, perhaps you will make the air more clean, right? So this is capitalizing on our desire to maintain an attractive self-image. I mean, at least I can say that whenever my car runs in eco mode, I actually feel good about it, because somewhere deep down I feel that okay, this is more fuel efficient, and perhaps I'm not releasing those many emissions in the air. So yeah, we can think about how we can capitalize on maintaining that self-image. The other part is to focus on people's inclination to what we say as follow the herd. So we know that how much we are impacted by what others are doing in the environment. We are always primed, psychologically speaking, by what is going around us. And sometimes we call it like follow the herd. So here I can take an example of a US power company called as O Power. And I mean, they're a power distribution company, and they did very interesting. So whenever they used to give you the energy bills, they also used to provide how much energy or how much units are being used by your neighbors. So in this way, sometimes you realize that perhaps you're using like way too much energy as compared to your neighbors, and you can cut down on certain things. You can be more aware on how you are using power at your home. So, we would always like to kind of imitate, I would say, the good behavior of our peers. And this is where, we can use this green nudge to help people make more better decisions with respect to environment. The last one is regarding, setting some defaults which are good for the environment. And if people go away from defaults, they have to, let's say, pay more, or they have to, perhaps go take a little bit more pain if they go with something apart from defaults. So let's say that we are in a customer support organization, and customers reach out to us with their queries. Now, if we say that, by default, you can always start a chat, but if you don't if you want to place a call, well, we all know that, the carbon footprint of a call will be greater than that of a chat. So if somebody wants to go apart from the default behavior of going to a chat, you can always say that perhaps it will take you more time to resolve your problem. And you can also give an environmental fact that, placing this call will perhaps, lead to so much emission, thereby leading to more a bad environment. So these are certain green nudges, that we can use as a designer. We have to be like really aware of our environmental facts and how we want to use it. Now, yes, I mean, there is another side to nudges also, which is regarding ethical concerns. So yes, we can't do something which is like completely unethical. So it has to be a balance between the right kind of nudge that we want to give to our users. And then we come to this idea of facts and interactions. So we rethink interactions based on certain techno environmental facts. So let's say a fact is that a typical business user creates like 135 kgs of carbon emissions from sending mails every year, which is like equivalent of driving 200 miles in a family car. So like, again, a pretty significant number. But what if we can work towards something in which we can reduce this exchange of emails? What if we provide proactive information to our users? What if we provide like simple notifications or even text messages, so that there is not so much exchange of emails? So we, again, we'll have to think of what kind of interactions are correct at what situation. And we have to remember this point, that we cannot compromise also our ability of present and along with the future. So we can't have unusable solutions uh, just because we are caring about the future. So it has to be a balance between what we do today and what and for a sustainable future. So this is where I would like to propose the idea of like a green design thinking process. So we are already, I think most of us know about the usual design thinking process, the stages of a design thinking process. But what I'm saying is that, what if we think about all these green nudges and these facts and interactions at each step, so that we are much more aware about environment, right? So this is something that we have to inculcate in our design thinking process. There are many other things which are missing from the standard process, but I think it's time now, as I said, to make a shift in perspective and to change things. So let's think of green nudges and all these interactions at every stage, but also kind of test it out with our users to see if we are also solving their needs at the same time caring for the environment. So overall, I would say that we have to also care about like formal structure. We can have like some small side of some small type of like environmental activism, in which we always ask our companies if they are LEED certified, if they are FSC certified, what they are doing towards being carbon neutral. We ask for them reports. I think these reports are pretty much public, and I think any company should be more than glad to share it with you. But these questions should be asked to your company. And then us as individuals, as designers, we can always make those small subtle changes in our design process on the interface, and we can always influence our peers through, let's say, n order thinking, green nudges and interactions. And we work together so that we move towards a more sustainable future. So as a parting line, I would just like to say that I think this is the time that we not just think about our survival, but we also think about the survival of the planet, of our children, and we actively work towards it. Yeah, thank you.